So you talked about the values in open sourcing this tool and project. Have you experienced any pushback or questions during any part of that process in terms of like understanding why those values are valuable to the company, or being or having any concerns about like the overhead of open sourcing a project and then maintaining that project in that open and public environment, as opposed to just having it as a library or a tool internally?
Yeah, it it is. I mean, many times, but maybe to one of the things that we actively do is we encourage everyone to contribute and build communities around these tools, not just externally, but also within the company. And also, it's not just about releasing code; it's about fostering the collaboration, knowledge sharing, and also long-term sustainability. Um, we did invest some time into open sourcing, like going through this whole process, understanding it, because it was the first time we did it in the mobile organization. Um, but the outcome was, it wasn't just open sourcing a piece of code, right? We had to refine the documentation. We had to make it modular, that it's not just Swisscom specific, it also um, complied with others. So it also gave us some after, or like some byproducts or some value, that if someone joins from within to the team, it also helps them to onboard quickly, because we had the right documentation refined, and it's easily understandable, and also many people now used it and also gave feedback, etc. um, yeah. To other part of the question, I mean, it's not just convincing, right? It's, we also understand that the most challenging part on open sourcing something is to sustaining the momentum of the project. Um, because it's easy for anyone to get excited at the start, right? So, hey, we want to open source something, but then it also takes consistent effort to keep the community engaged, grow it, and also make sure it stays healthy. Um, so yeah, those are some of the challenges and the downsides, or something that we need to keep an eye on. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at a minimum, you want to make sure that those that are responsible for the maintainership of the project, those reviewing others' code, onboarding folks who are looking to try to do something, responding to those feature requests, and nudging
Exactly.
whoever asked exactly how they might go about fixing it. Having the time to do that is the first step. And I would argue that from a management standpoint of view, a second step would properly be to actually have as part of goals and incentives for
Mm.
the year for the engineer is to actually make that community successful, and actually have the the incentives put directly onto the developer. It's not something I see very often, but I do think it is the journey that companies need to go through.
Exactly. Yeah. I think it's also internal, right? I mean, the question would come like, does it make sense for you to write software regardless of open sourcing? Like, do you really want to write it, or um, purchase it from someone else? Yeah, exactly. So it's the same. So how do you keep um, the engagement going, or the momentum going? Yeah, if it's an internal development activity.